just as I was talking about the return of the slow burn in Void Rivals, issue 14 comes along and really kicks things up a notch, offering up one of the most jam-packed and engrossing chapters in the title so far. Pretty much everything I mentioned in the video for issue 13 about there being too many story threads for any of them to really bloom in a satisfying way is countered in issue 14, where we get to experience the main thrust of the story gaining some gratifying momentum. Part of that may be down to how the various plots are weaving together and where the focus is given this time around. While all the same story threads return from the previous issue, some of them feel considerably shortened compared to issue 13. While you would think that that would lead to an overall feeling of a lack of motion, that ends up not being the case. The slowly unfolding side stories stand out far less this time, with the main plot moving at such a brisk pace. I think this is a Dirac-heavy issue, although I kind of hesitate to say that. It might not be a totally fair assessment. There are, after all, plenty of other characters that Dirac interacts with, but this story certainly feels weighted towards the Agorian character due to the amount of time we spent following him in issue 14. There are some strong moments with Dirac in this issue, to be sure, but what really makes him shine is how he plays off the other characters in the book. Like Minister Doolin, for one, a character I still have some conflicted feelings towards. He's just such a cold, pompous jerk. But at the same time, we've gotten hints that there may be more to him than that. In the past, we've seen him take a proactive approach in diffusing conflicts with Zalalak, rather than just continuing to puff out his chest and bluster. And he's quick to apologize, which is kind of a surprising trait, and it's something that we see in this issue in his interactions with Dirac. The maddening thing, though, is I'm not sure how sincere these apologies actually are. Sometimes they seem genuine, sometimes they seem more like those apologies that aren't really apologies, if you know what I mean. Regardless, my eyeballs were glued to watching this father-son dynamic unfold in the pages of this issue. It's clear that there are rifts and sore spots between Dirac and Doolin, but it's also clear that they're still family and that they still care about each other. Their relationship is a complicated one, a father and a son both stubbornly trying to get through to each other. But this issue also highlights Dirac's desire to do the right thing and his willingness to put himself in harm's way for the greater good. And here that translates into Dirac convincing his father to let him fly solo to intercept an incoming craft. As we've seen previously for Dirac, it's all about saving lives, and here that means searching for ways to de-escalate tensions. So volunteering for this mission gives him a chance to approach this situation diplomatically, in a way that aims to build a coalition rather than jumping to violence as a first resort and treating the unknown as an enemy, which was Doolin's initial response. There's another sense of deja vu in this issue. Last time, it was a callback to issue number 1, where Pythona and the cobra-la Royal Guard arrived at the area where Jetfire crash landed millions of years ago. This time, we get a nod to issue 2, with Dirac prepping for launch and crossing the event horizon, only to have a mystical experience very much calling to mind Dirac's original mission and his vision involving the prophecy and Goliant. The sense of deja vu is apparent to both Dirac and the reader, as evidenced by the implied hesitation and slowing of his dialogue, as he repeats the exact line from issue 2. Like issue 13, we've got a lot of reuse of panels, some exactly the same as issue 2, others with some subtle modifications. It's possible that this was a necessity in order to not drive Lorenzo de Felici insane in order to meet publishing deadlines, which, if that is the case, I can fully support that, but I can't help but wonder if this is an intentional bit of cyclical reuse. The fact that the first and second issues of this arc have pages that directly repeat material from the first and second issues of the first arc of Void Rivals seems too convenient to be a coincidence. But maybe it's a little from column A, a little from column B. This could be a way to lighten De Felici's workload and keep the publishing schedule of the book running smoothly, as well as a nod to previous chapters. And maybe there's no significant meaning behind it, but given the cyclical nature of the Zertonian, Agorian history and prophecy, with two civilizations at war with each other, then coming together in order to survive, only to later fall into bitter hostilities again, Plus, there's the fact that the sacred ring is, a giant circle. For now, though, it's just a neat little instance of history repeating itself in a cheeky way using the medium of comics. Probably the most exciting thing about issue 14 is the arrival of Hot Rod and the Quintessons. There's a bit more to talk about with Hot Rod, and I have to say I really dug how this first meeting between the Autobot and Derek was depicted, the misunderstanding and brief conflict that occurs, as well as its resolution. All of that stuff is handled to perfection as far as I'm concerned. Both parties act believably for who they are as characters, and the hostilities aren't dragged out for the sake of tension. Everything is resolved quickly and decisively, thanks to quick thinking by Derek, an approach to storytelling I very much appreciate. So yeah, it's looking like an alliance is shaping up nicely. At least between Derek and Hot Rod. Who knows how Doolin will respond. But I have to say, it's sort of suspicious that the deco of Derek's spaceship is Hot Rod's exact color scheme. It's weird, isn't it? Hinting at something, are we? What that might be, I'm not sure, but if they wanted to play up the whole robots in disguise angle, Hot Rod would sure fit right in on Agoria in vehicle mode. Either that or he'll be worshipped as some sort of deity or chosen one. I don't know. Despite the character's history with being the chosen one, I have some doubts the creative team would go in that direction, so I'm mostly kidding. But you have to admit, Hot Rod is conveniently on brand for a society that adheres to pretty strict color coding, and that can't be a coincidence, right? However things shake out with Hot Rod, we're really just scratching the surface here in terms of cool stuff with what this means for the series moving forward. Hot Rod and Springer both becoming regular fixtures in the title is an enticing prospect, one that may carry major implications for the identity of the book. The more Autobots and Decepticons we get in Void Rivals, the more difficult it will be to ignore that this is in fact a second Transformers book, despite the focus on other species. In Season 3 of the G1 cartoon, there was a real sense that Cybertronians were just one species among many in a richly diverse galactic civilization, and that space opera feel really comes through in Void Rivals. And I think it's just going to keep getting more and more prominent with every Transformers character added to the cast. A massive expansion in terms of all that stuff may still be a ways off yet, but that doesn't mean there isn't a lot to look forward to in the immediate future. While the solicit info for issue 15 suggests we won't be waiting long for Hot Rod and Springer to be reunited, the confrontation with the Quintessons, on the other hand, I think will be further off. With the ominous warning given here about revenge, I feel like there's no way these guys are just going to go off half-cocked. I really think they're going to bring down the full force of Quintessa. I'm expecting a full-scale invasion at some point, and I'm counting on it being a truly epic moment for the series, one that has me greatly anticipating distant issues. But I can't say for sure, just a guess. While the segments with Hot Rod and the Quintessons really amped up my excitement, there are a lot of other great little moments in this issue as well, ones that I don't have a lot of in-depth things to talk about, but ones that still deserve a quick mention nonetheless. The astral plane bickering between Derek and Solila fits well with the established dynamic of these two characters, and it produced some amusing lines, like Solila referring to Handroid as Derek's stupid chatty glove. Just a really good line. And speaking of Handroid, it was a bit of a trip seeing all the different Handroid models in an array of colors, and there was a part of me that knew that there were more of them, but it's still just a bit jarring to actually see them, as we spent so much time with our Handroid that it started to feel like it was the Handroid. Still, that doesn't mean that Blue Handroid is not welcome here. Handroid is such a lovable character, why not have two? Also of note, we get a very curious page with Skuxoid in this issue. Curious in the sense that I'm starting to wonder if there's more going on here. Skuxoid has been in a depression spiral since he was reminded that his wife and children are not at home waiting for him in issue 9, which the fact that he forgot he didn't have a family anymore, maybe in retrospect that should have stood out as being a bit more odd than it seemed at the time. In issue 14, he suddenly snaps out of the funk that he's been in, realizing that he can't keep moping around because he has a family to take care of. I can't help but wonder where this might be leading to and what it might say about Skuxoid. Is the character so traumatized that he's dipping in and out of reality? I don't know, that seems awfully heartbreaking and tragic, if so. Maybe too heartbreaking and tragic for such a generally lighthearted character? So I'm wondering if there's another reason for this, perhaps even something nefarious. I'm definitely considering some sort of foul play or manipulation as being a possibility here. I'm beginning to be suspicious as to whether or not Skuxoid ever had a family to begin with, but I could be way off base, and the reality of the character really is just that heart-wrenching and sad. Irrespective of the explanation, I get the sense that this isn't the first time this has happened to Skuxoid, and I'm expecting him to revert back to his space pirate ways that we first encountered at the start of the series, which means, of course, that there are undertones of even more cyclicism in an issue that is already loaded with it, which is interesting, and that might even be why I'm so suspicious here. The last thing worth a mention is Pythona and the Royal Guard. In this issue, we learn the names of the last two of the four Royal Guard, Bola and Gracula. There's an intriguing moment here where we see the pair remove a piece of debris from the eye of their Leviathan vessel, where upon touching the object, a green crystal, Gracula experiences a jolt. And at first glance, that seems to be the extent of it. However, coming into contact with the crystal may have had a more insidious and lasting effect, as it appears to be causing some sort of infection or possibly mutation on Gracula's armor. The crystal itself is an inclusion that got my head spinning with theories. At first I thought it might just be the material that makes up the energon ports in the heads of the Zertonians, but then I started considering whether or not it might be a Transformers reference. There are, after all, numerous instances of crystals from the original animated series, like the green crystals that seem to be treated as a natural part of Earth's ecosystem in Fire in the Sky and Fire on the Mountain. Both episodes featuring Skyfire, who kicked off the Energon Universe. But hold up there, me. There's also the Death Crystals from the Season 3 episode Chaos. As we know, Void Rivals is drawing quite a bit from Season 3, so I'm leaning towards this potentially being Death Crystals, but maybe there'll be some kind of interesting twist ahead. That is, if this is even a Transformers reference at all. It might not be. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments if you have any other ideas that I might have missed for what these crystals might be, as well as any other thoughts you have on the issue as a whole. Overall, I really liked this issue. I've been consistently enjoying Void Rivals, but I think this might be my favorite issue yet. There was just so much here, and there's quite a bit of stuff that I'm looking forward to seeing play out. I get the sense that we're on the cusp of some very big and some very fun things. And don't think I didn't notice Mistress Vil calling Zalalac a pretender in bold type. There's another exciting thing that's simmering in the background. We already know these characters are sort of pretender-esque, but I'm curious to see how far they'll take that association. Or if this was just a wink and a nod. A lot of stuff to look forward to, that's for sure. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thank you, as always, for watching this video. It's very much appreciated. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.